Back to Russell Brand.
And we warn you that you might find some of the content distressing. I want to show you a clip from Channel 4's Dispatches.
Grabbed me and got me on the bed. I was fully clothed and he was naked at this point.
I was like, oh my God, he raped me.
I was crying and he said, oh, I only want to see your mascara run anyway. I phoned and somebody asked what it was regarding, and I said, that's regarding Russell Brand being a sex offender.
Joined in the studio by Mail columnist Sarah Vine and political commentator Bushra Sheikh. Sarah, you wrote a very good piece in the Mail on Sunday.
Thank you.
As ever, saying, while these allegations are shocking, and of course they are, rape and all the rest of it, he's entitled to a fair trial.
Yes, he is, definitely. I mean, and also, I think that we have to be very careful about kind of conducting these sorts of trials in public with the media, with the bias that naturally exists. What I would say, though, is I have to say, I found the documentary quite sort of touching and very distressing. But I have to say that, you know, Russell Brand was a man who was openly what I would term a toe rag.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? He never sort of went around pretending to be, you know, Mother Teresa. I wouldn't have got in a taxi with him. I wouldn't have got in a lift with him. I wouldn't have been in the same room with him. And I certainly wouldn't have driven my 16-year-old virgin daughter with an eating disorder round to his house so that she could have sex with him. I have to say that I think there's a broader discussion here about the kind of culture that allows somebody like that to become as lionised and as feted and as worshipped as he was. Don't forget, Ed Miliband
He embraced
cozying up to him. Everybody, he edited an edition of the New Statesman. There's a very good piece today, actually, in the Daily Mail about all the lefties who were cozying up to him because he was so cool and trendy and fantastic. He wasn't cool and trendy and fantastic. I never thought he was cool and trendy and fantastic. I thought he was a horrible man who said awful things. I mean, he did that whole thing with Andrew Sachs, ringing it up and saying, I've slept with your granddaughter.
He was very young, and Andrew Sachs was nearly 80.
Exactly. I mean, I think that we also have questions. We all kind of have questions to answer as a culture about why someone like that was allowed such a free rein. And you know, it doesn't surprise me that he has been accused of these things. It's like, you know, De Beers relieve themselves in the woods. But it doesn't mean to say that, you know, if he is guilty of rape, if he is guilty of those things, he shouldn't be held accountable. Of course he should be held accountable. But I think that there is a way of doing this. It has to be done in a calm, objective way. And this, today, what we're seeing in the papers, what we're seeing on the news, is not calm and objective. And that's the problem. Because the thing is, if we don't do it that way, it diminishes all of the victims, if they are victims, and it diminishes all sorts of victims of sexual assault. We have to, as a society, be very responsible about how we deal with this.
Bushra, do you think also it's about how the context in which you see Russell Brand?
Oh, absolutely.
Because there are, I think you can divide it into two people. Those who remember the old Russell Brand. We've seen the clips. I thought that guy was an idiot. He was clearly extremely promiscuous. He hasn't denied that. And what I see as the new Russell Brand, which is somebody that speaks for the disenfranchised, the marginalised, people who want to shine a light in the dark corners of global corruption. Will you just talk a little bit about...
Well, totally. I mean, he has changed. He's turned his life around for the better. We know that now what he does is he exposes mainstream media a lot. We have to remember that GB News is also a channel that is also doing the very thing that people wanted. The mainstream agenda always takes the play. Now, this is a man that was platformed, like Sarah says, with all of his antics, the way that he was platformed, champion, put him all over the place, and they're the same people that are tearing him down at the very moment that he's become popular with more than 6 million people because he exposes the truth. Now, I'm just going to use the terminology. This is what I would deem another Matrix attack. It happened. So in one breath, I understand that there are allegations against him, but he is allowed to have due course, and mainstream media does this all the time. They make the public fight amongst each other, and that has an impact on that individual. So now people are going to deem him guilty already.
Well, let's bring Sarah back.
I have to say, I think just because you have a lot of followers on Twitter does not mean to say that you are some kind of truth guru. We know that social media is an insane place, and there are lots of very strange people. And what I would say about this investigation is that it has taken years of very forensic investigations by a very responsible news outlet to come to gather all the information and all the evidence to put this case. Russell Brand goes on the internet and says crazy things, and people think, oh, that's interesting. Conspiracy theorists.
How much have you watched? Like, genuinely, how much of his content?
Well, I'm not one of his followers. I'm not one of his followers, but I don't believe his anti-vax conspiracy theories. I don't believe any of that stuff.
Sarah.
Like, of course I don't watch it. But why?
It's like saying I can't have an opinion on the dispatches unless I've watched the documentary.
What you're basically saying is that because he's popular on the internets.
What's wrong with the internet is how most young people consume media.
The thing is there are no regulations online. Anyone can pretty much say anything they want.
It's more regulated online. He's more regulated. He's had to go online because his truth.
Is YouTube regulated by Ofcom now? I don't know.
No, it's regulated by YouTube, and they have very strict. He's had to leave YouTube to go to Rumble.
YouTube is a company that exists to make money. Of course, they're not going to regulate somebody who's got 6.5 million followers. I think that's how many he's got. It's not. These are. It's not government regulated. There are no standards. You can say anything you want. Now, I'm not saying that people who watch him aren't right to watch him. I'm not saying that what he says is wrong. I'm just saying that he's
Bev's hero. Bev has described him in a tweet at the weekend as his hero.
I am acutely aware of his content.
I just don't buy this. I'm a victim because everybody wants to bring me down because I'm so popular. That's not true. These allegations are really quite serious. I think it's wrong to try somebody in the court of public opinion. I think that's completely unacceptable, and we've seen it happen to people, and we've seen it go badly, badly wrong. Look what happened to. I'm trying to,
I'm just going to add.
There are so many cases of men who have had this happen.
To say that Brand has become a brand within himself because he exposes. He doesn't just go online and just spout nonsense. He investigates thoroughly.
He has a massive team. He has a massive team that work for him, and what he will do in a lot of his podcasts and videocasts, he will take, because he has to get around the regulations on YouTube because they are more restricted than you would imagine, and he's had to go to Rumble for that very reason. He will take a newspaper article, something from the Washington Times, from the Times, from the Mail, from the Express and the Guardian, and he will critique it, and he will go to experts and say, is this true? Is this not true? And he does always say, I don't know, but I'm putting the information out there for you to decide on a whole range of topics.
But I don't understand why that is at all germane to this discussion.
Right.
I don't understand why the fact that he has a successful YouTube channel means that he shouldn't be held accountable for things that he did to women.
Yeah.
That's not it. That's not what it is. But it's about the suspicion. And there's a piece in the paper yesterday about how a third of adults are now what we call super distrusters of mainstream establishment media. Because so many people have felt let down by the establishment media in the last 3 years. They've gone to find people.
But we're in Trumpian territory here, guys. We need to be really careful.
Sarah, what you've got to remember is the moment that somebody becomes influential to the amount that he is, because he's very influential.
Very powerful.
There is a pattern emerging here that the way that you tear men down is how? It's through the behaviour.
So are you saying the mainstream media are pulling him down because they fear him?
Absolutely, I think he tells the truth.
Absolute nonsense.
I think he tells the truth, and I think
where does
he
this
comes from a
come
position
from?
where people really want to see.
So these women have made it all up to fit into a mainstream media conspiracy?
No, absolutely not. I think it's very fair for these women to come forward if that's how they feel, but everybody's allowed to be innocent until they're proven guilty in the court of law.
Yeah, I mean, I said yesterday in my column that, the whole Me Too movement has been politicised. It definitely has, and people do hijack it for their own means. But I still think that this, the amount of stuff that's coming out about him is interesting and needs to be investigated. Yeah. And I don't think that just because somebody... you could say this about Prince Andrew. Just because somebody is powerful or popular or whatever, that they should be exempt from the investigations. And that's all I'm saying.
He was, though. There was so much on Prince Andrew, and they didn't really investigate him.
He's been destroyed by it.
But he still wasn't checked up. But he still wasn't investigated.
Well, hang on. And who exposed him? The mainstream media.
Exactly.
The mainstream media exposed Prince Andrew.
He was hardly
Hang on. He's been banned from public life. He's written a cheque for 11.5 million, which the poor old Queen probably had to bankroll him to. He doesn't. There were never any criminal charges against him because he didn't break any law.
Well, you could argue
it was inappropriate behaviour, and he's finished.
But then, Andrew, at the same time, we don't really know what happens behind the scene and what gets played. What I do know is that
there haven't been allegations of rape against Prince Andrew. There have been serious allegations of rape against Russell Brand.
What I would say,
two
is, and I think
different
this is what
women.
Bev is trying to say is I do think that somebody deserves a second chance. I do think that he has made a huge effort to rehabilitate himself over the last 10 years. I do think it is unfair that you can have that your past can come back to bite you really badly like this. I think people should be able to move on from their mistakes.
There's no statute of limitations
and
in
there's
America.
no statute of limitations. And I think perhaps, one of the things that I would say is that I do think that if women are going to bring claims against people, or men against women, whatever, I think there should perhaps be a limit. You have to say,
there isn't,
5 years or whatever you decide it's going to be, sensible limit, someone should set it, probably not me. But I just think there has to be a moment where you say, OK, we're drawing a line under that and we're moving on. And I think that, he does, everybody deserves a second chance.
I think in terms of whether this is